Yeah.
So they
Views.
was it?
All right. Let's see. How do we get this thing going here? So we're missing Heijin. Who else? Well, that's it. Josh is going to be late. Okay. Eric is never here. Eric's still a roll. Stop caring. I already have enough going on. I don't need to care about that too. All right. Isn't it nice outside? I just want to be outside all day. Oh, it's nice. It's perfect. All right, guys. Today we are going to be talking about animation in core graphics. So we're going to get familiar with the most basic things in core graphics. We're going to get familiar with Facebook Pop. You'll be able to use Objective-C CocoaPods in Swift because Pop is an Objective-C CocoaPod, so there's no Swift version of it. So we'll do that together today. And we're going to be animating a lot of things in a lot of different ways. I feel like I need to insert this slide because what I'm trying to do today is impossible, basically. I can talk 12 weeks just about this. And I feel like last time at MapKit, it's not 12 weeks, but I can talk 6 weeks about MapKit synchronization. And I feel like some people were a little bit, not disappointed, but I also need to, we're not disappointed, but they were like, well, this was a lot. And I'm like, yeah, well, it is a lot, you know what I mean? And I just want to do this so you have like a big overview. So maybe today I'll take it a little bit slower. I showed you the example app that I made last time. I think I'm going to get started on that today, but it's not going to be the majority of today's time because it's going to just be me showing how to do stuff, and it will be a lot, and it will be fast. So I think we'll go over basic stuff, do basic stuff together, and in the remaining time, we'll go to like that sample project and do the crazy stuff. And then the top two are very relevant to what we're doing today and tomorrow. I was preparing last night for today, and I was trying to do one simple animation effect that we're going to be doing today, and I think it took me about 40 minutes to figure it out myself. So this might seem like I have like the secret sauce, and like I tell you, oh, you just have to do this, and you guys are like, but like why, how, like, and the answer is you fail and you keep trying. And this might not always be reflected if I am presenting something or demoing something, but even I struggle with the most dumb things the entire time. And the same thing is gonna be the case when we create very custom interfaces. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, I think it's fun. I really enjoy doing that, but a lot of people hate it. And that's just what it is. It's hard, it's time consuming, especially that. It's not rocket science, but it is time consuming. So keep that in mind today, because we'll be covering a lot again. I'm basically going to be talking about core graphics, animation, and Facebook Pop, and a little bit of Objective-C. I mean, all of those things are a lot. All right, let's talk about core graphics. Why do we talk about core graphics? Well, there's this thing under that really well works together with core graphics called core animation. And we're not going to use core animation. We're going to see one animation in core animation, but we're not going to use it because I think it's pretty hard. There's a lot of overhead going on, and Facebook Pop takes a lot of that overhead, for instance, away. And Facebook Pop is not even based on this. It's not based on core animation. It's not like a layer on top of it. So it's really its own thing. So why do we still talk about core graphics? Well, I think they're very relevant still together, also in the sense that Facebook Pop does allow you to animate a lot of things on graphics, on layers. So I think they're very relevant. We're also going to be talking a little bit about shadows, gradients today. Although that's not really an animation kind of thing, it is like a pretty kind of thing. So I feel like they somehow still work together. And if we quickly do a recap, talking about views, our views were always rectangular, right? Even though they might not look like that to a user, they are still defined by a X and Y starting point and a width and a height. Remember? Talked about this. So this is for UI view and its subclasses. So UI button, UI image view, UI label, all of these. And when we talk about layers, we're going one level deeper. So we have been working with a lot of frameworks now, but the main one is still been not UI view, UI kit. Like I said, Core Graphics is one level deeper, closer to the hardware layer, so to say. So it's a little bit more low level. And you could say almost that UI view, for a small part of it at least, is just sugarcoating on top of Core Graphics. Because as you'll see today, everything you add on your screen using UI views, if you delete all the sublayers of a layer, those are gone. So when you add a subview to a view, in the background, it's adding sublayers for you. You just don't have to worry about the Core Graphics part. So they're very much tied together to some extent. So they also have a very similar API to some extent. For instance, a view property has a layer, and if it's on this slide, on each layer, just like you can do add subview, you can do add layer or add sublayer or something like that. So a lot of things will look a little bit similar. Layers can also exist without parent views, which is true, but they always have a parent layer. So just like every view controller comes with a default view, everything you see on your screen at least has one view, which comes with one layer, so to say. And a layer, just like UI view, has a lot of properties you can set on them. You can just like on view set a background color. And then some layers have something more specific like fill colors, stroke widths, or border widths, stroke colors, shadows, and many more things. And just like with views, where the main view is UI view, right? And then you, for instance, have a UI button. Core Graphics has the same concept where the base object is a CA layer. CA layer. And then there's CA shape layer, for instance, which is a little bit more specific shape layer. But just like with UIKit, it inherits from a CA layer. So CA layer is the base. You could compare it to a UI view. It takes a frame, a background color, and that's it. There's not much you can set on a CA layer. And good to know. We talked about Core Graphics a little bit when talking about frames, right? CG rect, Core Graphics rect, XY with height. We're not on the UI level anymore, so we can't, for instance, use UI color. We need to cast those UI colors to a CG color, Core Graphics color, because Core Graphics has no knowledge of UIKit at all. Also, layers and Core Graphics have no concept of constraints. It's not a thing. So we can't set constraints for layers, which is rather annoying, as you'll see. Everything is really done with views, with a CG rect, so X, Y, width, and height. And that width and height is fixed, so to say. There's a little trick we can do there to make it look like it's working with our normal constraints, but we'll see how to do that. We instantiate a layer just by calling CA layer, just like we do UI view, and then our parentheses. And we can add layers to other layers using add sublayer. So this is how you would create the most basic layer. You do let new layer equals CA layer. You can give it a background color. And as you can see, you do UI color dot ref color dot CG color, which takes the Core Graphics color out of it. You set a frame, X and Y 100, 100, width and height 100, 100. And then this is the view. a normal UI view. So you could do view.layer.add_sublayer. So this is not crazy, right? This is pretty basic layering. So let's get to Xcode. If you pull today's project, you should see a folder that is called Animation Introduction, which is actually Core Graphics Introduction now that I think about it, but I called it Animation Introduction. And start by opening up the Start View controller. Also, if you have Git issues, wave your hand. Animation Introduction under lesson 21. You find it? Also, I wrote down a whole written explanation of everything that is more or less in the slides in Code Commons. So you can open up this project and read more about what we did for each step and why we did that. Does everyone have this? Who's still GitHub polling? All right, let me know when you're done. So there's a bunch of to-dos in this project. Some of them we'll do together. Some of them you guys will do. There might be some research you need to do, doing some lookup. You need to get used to that too. They're all very short, very easy, small to-dos, and then I'll give you like 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can move on to the next thing. Everyone here? Yijing, you too?
I'm opening the class.
All right, no, take your time. I just want to be sure that everyone's here, so. Lesson 21, and then Animation Introduction. So if you have the file open, go to line number 39, where the first to do is waiting for us. In the meantime, let me give you an overview of what a storyboard looks like, especially for the first view controller. It's actually nothing crazy. The only thing you should know is that the view controller's view has a drawboard layer, which is just a UI view layer which spans the entire width and height. The reason why we do this is when we will click this trash can, it will empty everything that is in this layer. If you would do cell.view, if you would empty everything on cell.view, all of this would be gone. Because you're dealing on core graphics, so for instance, this bar and these buttons are also sub-layers from layer. You'll see, I'll show what it otherwise assumes. So there should be an outlet on top that is called drawboards, which is not proper English and should be drawing boards. Are you good?
Created the layer for code. It's not a drag and drop.
No, I just said I dragged out a UI view and gave it full width, height.
Oh, no, it's just a UI view.
Yeah, it's just UI view. It's nothing crazy. Are you so mentally prepared for hard stuff that this, suddenly you're like, just UI view? This is easy. All right. So first to do. And actually, this one is already for you guys. Well, no, this one we're going to do together. This is more a proof of concept. So let's start by giving our views layer a nice color using background color, just like you would on normal UI view. So help me remind, how would you set a background color on a normal view? So let's assume it's, yeah, exactly, right? Background color equals UI color dot red color. So if I run this code, you don't have to type this. This is just to show I'm going to undo this in a second. So if I do this, my draw board, which is this whole full width and height layer, is red, right? Now, just to prove my concept that every view comes with a layer, we can do drawBoard.layer.background color equals UI color.red color. And I'll undo this one. And this won't work. We need to cast it. I always forget it. I'll probably forget it 700 times a day. You need to cast it to a CG color, right? But the effect is entirely the same. And what is even more important, if you would keep this here, it will override whatever the background color was. So the yellow is gone. And I even think, not sure about that one, but let's try it. If we first give the layer a background color and then the view, it's still going to be red. So layer widths, layers of undo. That's not true. All right, but so you do override whatever it was. So we set it to yellow first, and then we set the layer's background color to red, and it is red. And I'm not going to keep red, by the way, because it's I created beautiful functions for random colors for all the shapes we'll be adding. So the red will mess that up. So I will do drawBoard.layer.background color equals UI color, and it has a initializer that you can use for white, which is really cool actually. So this initializer will only play in the grayscale part of the color scheme that is available. So if you set white to 0, you'll have a full black layer. If you set white to 0.5, if you remember, like, I don't have Photoshop on my computer now, but if you see a color picker from black to white, 0.5 will be a middle gray. So 0.9 will almost be fully white, but a very light gray. I don't even think you'll see it on presentation because it's that. So yeah, you do. See? So this will be my background color. If we scroll down to lines 56 in my case, this is one I want you guys to do. I want you to create a new layer, give it a frame and a background color, and add it to the main layer, which means the drawboard layer. So remember the code from the presentation. Try and see if you remember, and add it to the drawboard. 3 minutes, something like that. Let me know if you have a question about this.
We need to create now with
Code. Everything is going to be code. So Core Graphics has no storyboard things. You can't drag out a Core Graphics layer or anything like that. That's all going to be happening in code. So it's literally just the lines that were in the presentation earlier, but I want you to type it yourself so you get used to the syntax. That's the point. You don't have a presentation. I want you to try it, see if you remember. You want to be working with a CA layer. That is the base type. First instantiate it. Let's do it like this. Instantiate a new CA layer. Give it a frame. Give it a background color. And 4, add it to drawBoard.layer. It's literally 4 lines of code, so each step is 1 line. Use Google if you don't remember anything or like something from this. 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Let's do the first one, and then I'll give you another minute so you can move on. What is the first line?
Let my CA layer or whatever. Equals CA layer.
Exactly. So instantiate a new layer. This was the hardest one, I think. So The other one should be pretty straightforward. Very similar to IQ. Give it that XY of 100 and with an height of 100, something like that. Just put it somewhere on your screen. Does anyone remember what a frame, what type of frame is? CG Rex. That's right, yeah. So let's add a frame. Who knows how? Mm-hmm. And the preferred way of creating a CG Rect is using CG Rect make. You're going to see this a lot today. The make after a keyword, it's like core graphics kind of API thing. So 100, 100, 100. How do we give it a background color? Also use your code tinting, right guys? So if you type background color, it tells you what type it's expecting. So you don't need to like guess all or remember all of these things. Equals?
Or for this one, do you have to do layer, not
No, because it was a view. So a view comes with a layer, but right here we are working with a layer directly. So this doesn't have a layer property even, I think, if I'm,
the UI.
yeah, it doesn't have a layer property.
UI.
Oh. How do we add it to the drawing board? How do we add a view to another view? What is the function? Yeah, exactly. Just like add sub view, there's add sub layer. That's it. If you run again, you should see a beautiful red square on our drawing board. Did we ever talk about border radiuses? Now is a good time to recap on that. So remember like a rounded corner kind of view? Not possible in UIKit. You also would have to do view.layer.border radius, I think it is. So on the layer, you can do it directly. New layer dot border, no, corner radius. I always mix the two up with CSS. And so if you set it to 5, you'll see a nice rounded corner on your views. So if you have a UI view, you need to do myView.layer.cornerRadius equals 5. So you can still do it on normal UI view, but you need to access the layer property then. But here we're not working with a UI view, but directly on a CA layer, so we can just do it new layer.cornerRadius. All right. Let's take a look at the next to-do. Line 74. This is a good recap. I want you to create a normal UI label in code completely. Have you done that before? I see everybody wants. Can you do that? So create a UI label in code and just add it to the drawing board. So this is just UIKit, no core graphics for the moment. So draw out the to-dos, instantiate a UI label. Two is give it some text. Give it a frame. We're not going to worry about constraints here. Add it to the drawing board. How do we instantiate a UI label? Yep, just like with CA layer, just like with a UI view, they're all the same. The name and parentheses, and they're instantiated. Give it a frame that is big enough, otherwise your text is going to be cut off. And you'll see it pop, pop, pop. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, done. Are we, who's where? Done? 4. Alvin? Done? Hitching? May?
Let me run it.
All right, cool. That's good. That's good. What you'll typically see, and it's getting better and better, but if you're trying to do really complex kind of things, you're easily going to jump to code because you need to do a lot of stuff in code anyway. So it's getting better and better because Apple is supporting more and more on the storyboard, but there's still a lot of things that cannot be done. All good? David, what do I do?
Create a new, I did a new UI label, or like UI label equals UI label.
Mm-hmm.
So new UI label dot text equals.
Oops. Text. Oh, sorry. New label dot text equals.
And I just put my text label.
Now what? Give it a frame.
Frame, CG, React.
Do something like 2500. I mean, if it's on your screen, it's fine. Don't change it by any kind of means. Doesn't matter.
So I just got an error when I ran it.
What did it say?
It says cannot convert value type UI label to affected arguments.
Aha, because you're adding it on the wrong thing.
That's what I just.
So we're just working with UIKit now, so there's no concept of layers.
Gotcha. So add something.
Yep. And I think, let me check, that you can do two things. These should theoretically be the same. It doesn't? Not be used on instance of type C. Oh. It doesn't show up, or? I know why. Because it would work if you do new label dot layer. Why does it keep dot layer dot frame? This might work. 2500, 120. I mean, you should never. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? This is just for testing purposes. I want you to add it as a UI view, right? There's no reason to start messing with UIKit. No, you're right. I mean, there's definitely no reason to start messing around with adding UIKit items to layers if not necessary. So let's keep it simple.
The label will be on the same layer as the top.
More on that in a bit. It will. So all of these things will eventually be on the same layer. If you will delete this button eventually, everything that is on the drawing boards will disappear. All right, so that makes sense. The only thing I'm going to do, you guys don't have to do this. This is so we can easily see it. I'm going to increase the font size a little bit so it's easier to see on the screen. There we go. So what do we want to talk about? As you see in the code comments, the next thing is shadows. Shadows are pretty cool and very common, almost. I mean, I like them when they're subtle. So shadows are also something you cannot do in UIKit. So we add the label in UIKit so you could create your label on your storyboards, drag an outlet to your view controller, and in view.load, add the shadow. That's a very common way of doing it. Because you cannot do the shadow in the storyboard, there's also no need to do everything in code. Like we are now, just for demonstration, but you can still do something on a storyboard, drag an outlet, and then modify your outlet. So how do we add shadow? It's pretty easy. We can do new label, dot layer, and then if you start typing shadow, you'll see everything you can change: shadow path, shadow color, shadow offset, shadow radius, and shadow opacity. So I'm going to start with shadow color equals UI color dot red color dot exactly, because we are working with the layer part, right? So new label dot layer dot shadow offset is how do you want your shadow positioned to your layer. And what might be, well, it's actually not that weird. It takes a CG size. So just as CG rect, there's a CG size make, and the width is the X offset, and the Y is the, well, the height is the Y offset. So if I put this on 5 or 4, you'll see that if my label is here, my shadow will be like right there or something. You can set shadow opacity, which is 1 by default, but very common. I'm going to keep it as 1 because it's hard to see on projection otherwise. But if you want, it's very common to have a shadow of like 20%. So you would do, let's actually do it to like 0.9. New label dot layer dot shadow opacity is 0.9. So that takes a number between 0 and 1, 0 being completely transparent, 1 being fully there. And then there's one more thing you can set, which is somewhat interesting too. Shadow radius is how blurry you want your shadow to be. So if I set this to 0, you'll see that my shadow is almost an exact copy of my label. See? So probably not what you want, but this is, I mean, just like in any graphical design tool, you can play with this a little bit. So if I set this to 3, for instance, you'll see a nice blurry shadow, or at least already better than what we had. See? And so as you see, it's a little bit to the right and to the bottom, and that is defined by this CG size here. So if I set this to be 0, 0, you'll see that it's literally right behind the label. Make sense?
What if you don't set the size make?
The what?
The CG size make. What if you don't set that?
What have we done with that?
What if you don't set? If you don't have the lines.
Oh, I think it's by default 0, 0.
How did you adjust the size again.
Oh no, it looks like it's a little bit on top. We're gonna talk about that more on Monday. You need to. It's not. You need to give a font name and then a font size. And these font names are the hard part. Like, how do you figure out what the right font name is for a font? But more on that on Monday. All right, that's shadows. Any questions about what we've done so far? This is all pretty okay, straightforward. All right, let's jump to the slides again for a little bit. What we'll see is that a lot of our layers are not going to be CA layers. They're not that exciting, right? I mean, we've done some cool stuff so far. We can create squares, and that's about it. We can give them some corner radius, so they look like a nice round square. Now, what it's going to be like a very common way of creating or working with core graphics is that we want to do something a little bit different. We're going to make ovals or triangles or arcs, stuff like that. And what will always, or most of the time, be the way of working is, we haven't really talked about this yet, but there's this thing called UI Bezier pad, which is just like you would expect in Sketch. You can do, or in any graphical design tool, Illustrator, you create a pad, which can be a lot of points, 4 points, it can be a circle, it can be everything. One thing you should notice is that this is UIKit. So we're working with UIKit stuff here. So that's most of the time the first step. You create a Bezier pad. For instance, you do UI Bezier pad, which has initializer, oval, and rect. And rect is a CG rect, so it takes a frame. So let's say you pass it a rect of this size, what will it do? It will create an oval in there, like this. I mean, I can't draw, this is like an egg. But you get what I mean, right? You give it a rect, and in that rect, it's going to create an oval. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to create what is called a CA shape layer. So a little subclass of CA layer. And what the cool thing is with the CA shape layer is it has a pad property. And these two work pretty well together. You can just pass the pad that you created with UI Bezier pad and take the CG pad, just like you do with UI color to CG color. UI Bezier pad has a CG pad property that you can call on it. Other thing you should know about CA shape layers is that they have background colors, but the actual shape you can fill it up using fill color. And it has also strokes you can set. We'll see how to do that in a little bit. All right. So just wanted to explain that theoretically. We're going to immediately go back to Xcode and practice this. So I want you to delete all layers for now and create arc. I want us to start with create oval. So eventually, every time, so these buttons, by the way, are tied to these, right? Arc, oval, triangle, gradient. And for these three, we'll eventually have it that every time you click it, it will create a random oval on your screen somewhere, or it will create a random point. But let's start with a basic one and just add them on top of each other. So help me remember, how do we create a UI Bezier pad? And let's take a look at all the initializers it offers. So also note about, like, for instance, that round square we did, you can just do CA layer, set corner radius, but as you see here, you can also do it using a CA shape layer, and it has this Bezier pad initializer, rounded rect with a corner radius. So just normal rectangular layer you can do using normal CA layer or a CA shape layer, depending on, I mean, the most correct way would be CA shape layer, so to say, almost. But there's a lot of things we can do. Arc, which is what we're going to use in a little bit. You can create a UI Bezier pad from a CG pad. This is the one we're going to be using now. There's rect, rounded rect, and rounded rect. Those are the big ones. So let's take a look at this one, oval in rect. So how do we create a CG rect again? So I'm going to give it an x of like, I don't know, 200, a y of 200, a width of 100, and a height of 100, something like that. And we'll make this is the part that will make dynamic, so it spawns everywhere. What is the next step? Not create a CA layer, but May, you remember? Not CA layer, but CA shape layer. And you just initialize it just like you would do with a CA layer. And so our new shape layer has a property on it called pat. What do we pass here? So we want to somehow use this pat we created here and give it to our shape layer. Exactly, pat, CG pat. I'm going to give it a nice little color. So fill color equals, and I'm going to show you the difference with a background color in a bit. UI color dot yellow color dot CG color, and adding it is just the same. Drawboard dot layer dot add sublayer, new shape layer. So very similar to adding a normal CA layer and creating a normal CA layer. It's not that different. So if you run again, it did not work. Where did our layer go? Did I? No.
I think it's zero.
It's what?
No, it's not. What is the?
Oh yeah, you're right. Of course. There we go. You need to click the button, of course. And to show the difference with a background color, no. That is on the label, which is not what we want. Well, you don't see the background color because this thing technically doesn't have a frame, but let's say we say new shape layer dot frame equals CG rect make 0, 0. This is a guess. Let's see if we see it now. Oval. So a layer can be a frame of 0, 300, 300, 300. But the shape layer itself, or the actual shape of that layer, is in a different thing. So that's why we don't set layer dot background color, but we use fill color instead. So I typically never set a frame when I use a CA shape layer. Does that make sense? So what I did now, and you can actually see this right now, they by accident nicely line up to 50. So a shape layer's frame and its shapes pat are two different things. So the pat has a fill color which lives on 300, 300, 100, 100, oval and rect, but the frame is right here and just chills over there, and that's fine. So you typically don't set a background color or a frame on a CA shape layer. Now what is interesting though, and I'm pretty sure this will work, so this layer of this shape technically is only this part, yet you can still see this. Because iOS by default shows what is called the overflow of a layer. So if a layer goes beyond its edges, it still shows it. There's a way to disable that though. If you do, and I always have to guess, new shape layer dot clip clip to bounds CA shape or CA layer clip mask. Masks to bounds by default is false. If we set it to true, we should see that our circle is being cut off. Very important concepts. So even though our shape layer's frame is 0, 0, 300, 300, our shape layer lives independently from that on 300, 300 width and height of 100. So technically half outside of our layer's frame. And that's fine because iOS by default doesn't clip things off. But you can, and sometimes you really want to because we'll see, well, I don't think we'll get there, maybe you will. Sometimes you do want to clip something off, and then you would use something like masks to bounds. Does that make sense? So just remember, if you have a shape layer, you typically don't set a frame or a background color. You set where it needs to live, so it's positioned on the pad, and you set the color it needs to have as a fill color. Well, I'll keep that and just comment it out. No, yes, there we go. This is what you should have. Just creating it, setting its path, setting its fill color. Other cool things you can do with shape layers is they have a border color and a border width. Go to take border width. You can even easily do dashed borders and stuff. So it's pretty powerful. I keep thinking it will show up automatically. It's not, oh, I always miss here too. CG color, stroke color. I think that's the one. There we go. So border color is on the frame, but we're working with shape, so we need the stroke color. Let me see if I can make it dashed. And it's actually also probably stroke, no. Seems rather thin. Let's see if we set it to 20. See, it's CA, shape layers, stroke, line width. This is going to be ridiculously thick. Keep it in there if you want to ever reference this. There we go. So this is kind of the problem. CA layer has a border property, and then CA shape layer uses what is called a stroke color and a line width. So you need to, I always have to try and build 2 times. I never remember correctly. Any questions about this?
Shape layer is the same as me, but just for
It's a subclass of CA layer. So just like UI button inherits from UI view, the CA shape layer inherits from CA layer and adds some extra properties like pad, which is not available on CA layer.
what's that?
The pad is what defines how it lives or how it is drawn in space. So it takes a CG pad, which we can easily create from a UI Bezier pad. We'll be using UI Bezier pad in 2 other examples. Cool. Try adding one yourself here under. So do the same thing. Try to add one with a different color, different position, somewhere else on the screen.
When we sign the path, when we assign the procedure path to the shape layer path, it's just saying they're the same shape. They're like the same.
Yeah. So by default, a CA shape layer will show nothing. You give it its form, its layout, its path using the path property. And all we do here is taking this busy path and assigning it. The thing is though, CA shape layer doesn't know about UIKit. And this is UIKit. So just like with a UI color, we need to cast it to a CG path. So without a shape layer is nowhere without a path. It's really, I mean, you could set a frame and a background color, but then you're just treating it as a normal CA layer. There's no point in creating a shape layer. Cool?
If you don't comment at all, it's pretty cool.
Oh, probably. Oh yeah. Oof, oof. What was that? Oh. You can create art. Command backspace. Oh, I just said a new.
Oh, just commit back.
Always, yeah. You can do it for multiple lines too. So try creating a new path, a new shape layer, and add it to the sub layer. Add it somewhere else. And then we'll make it dynamic. So it happens at a random point somewhere on the drawing board. So as a general thing you need to remember, CA layer gets it position plus size from the frame. And a CA shape layer gets it position plus size from the path. Does that make sense? What's up?
Pink is not a UI color.
No, pink is not a UI color. It's strange, right? I've been looking for it too. I was like, how is this not a UI color? There's an easy way, we haven't seen this yet, to write extensions on existing Apple classes. So you could easily make UI color.pink color something available in your projects. There's other ones where I was like, how is this not part of UI color? You guys have a second oval?
There's only ovals and rectangles. There are no other shapes that
No,
are.
there's, well, the other ones you create by doing, you can actually, and that's what we'll do when we do triangle, you can create a shape completely from scratch. So you can say, move to point here, then you say the next thing, add line to point here, and you can do that as many times as you want. Add line to point there, add line to point there, add line to point there, there, and then close path, which will close it. But you literally, I mean, this is a pretty complex. I've definitely done it at some point. Where did I use that? I use it in Dot for something. Oh, I needed to. I don't think I have a cable on me. No, I think they do. Yeah, I'm good. No.
I'm taking notes for the whole-
No, I wish. I was reading through your policy, so I was like.
You also
That's
not
my
have.
job is different from after full day's work.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what happens to mine.
On the floor.
It's a long policy. I didn't know I had months.
So when did I actually really create or use this? Oh, and now my recording for Google stopped again. I fucking hate this. You did have it? Maybe this is mine then? I don't know how it got there though. So let's take a look here. This graph is actually completely rendered using Core Graphics. So what did I do to do that? It's actually pretty simple and probably not the most straightforward way. So those are days, right? So today, tomorrow, the next 7 days. So let's say you have 7 visible days, 7, which is all those numbers. And then I also have 2 invisible days off screen because I want my graph to start off screen, so to say, and not here to here. So I did that, and then I was like, okay, so we know, for instance, we have a height available of 200 points. So you can say the maximum value of 200 points, or let's say the value is a number between 1 and 6, right? And the maximum number in these 9 days is, for instance, 4. Then you know that the top or something would be 4, and then you map everything there. So what did I do for each of these days? First, I drew a bar. And I had my bar, and I was like, okay, so this is pretty cool. These were shape layers. I have all my shape layers now. So what I do, I can add a line now from the center top point of each of these. So now we have already a graph, not a pretty one yet because they needed it to be like all nice and smooth. But this is basically it, right? And then I created, well, so I didn't stop here. What I did then is went off screen, click to bounce, so that's not visible. And then the only thing remaining to do was add smoothing to it, and there you go. And this top one was it's hard to see on the projection, but it's a gradient. See a gradient layer, and that's all I had to do. So this part, this like big graph, was completely written using this move to point, add line to point. So creating graphs is something you can do using Core Graphics. I mean, there's libraries to do it for you, and this was a pain in the ass in math, but my boss wanted to be able to like do a lot of things. We had to be able to swipe over it, so I'm like swiping over it now, and it's like following me around. And he also wanted to tap. So what I did on tap is I checked on which bar the tap got registered because the bars touched each other. So you were always tapping on a bar, and then I knew which day you were tapping on, so I could just move the overlay to that day centered.
They have a wiggle.
A what?
You have a wiggle.
Yeah, Facebook pop. And then the only thing that is making that thing follow it, so to say, is you put a 0.1 delay on the top thing compared to the bottom thing. So because of the wiggling, it looks really nice. So Core Graphics is really, really useful. It's very much a thing that you can use on a real app. All right.
I think that it pays off to put in that upfront time into doing some say Core Graphics.
I use a library. Jawbone has a really good one for graphs, and I implemented it. And my boss was, I think Jawbone's only supported scrubbing over it, so no tapping. And so he was like, I want to tap. I was like, well, it doesn't support tap. So I was like, I guess we're not tapping. And he's like, no, we're gonna tap. You're gonna pull it off. And I was like, okay, I guess. So I spent my entire weekend, I went on Saturday and Sunday doing this. And you could have argued maybe it was easier to add it to JavaOne's library. I think this is easier because you are in full control of the code. You know everything that's going on. You don't have all the overhead that that JavaOne library offered you that I didn't want to use. For instance, it adds support for bar and line graphs and stuff. I was like, I don't need any of this. I just want to have a pretty graph. So yes.
That takes a whole.
Well, I had to do a lot of testing. It's also the thing, if you just have a bar graph, drawing the bars is the easy part, right? Like you don't even need core graphics for that. We can use whatever we already learned with constraints for that. And then you just make them animate. No, honestly, it's really what you would do. You create 9, and actually I could show, maybe we'll try to do it in break. I had a debug mode, and the debug mode shows all the bars, and I gave them a random color, so you can actually see how this thing is powered and what is going on. But core graphics, cool stuff. All right, just to make this a little bit more fun, and we don't need, what is this? We don't need to really get into the details, but there's a utilities class that has some functions for us. Let's see. Generate random point within rect, so you pass it a CG rect and it's going to choose a random point, which is what we're going to be using today. Generate random color is also a fun one, and it already returns a CG color. I also create or generate random rect in rect, so that creates a random CG point and a random width and height for you. So you give it a min width and a max width, and then for instance you say 150, 250, and it's going to generate a random number between 150 and 250 for you. Generate random scale generates a random number between 1 and 2, or 0 and 3. And then generate random degree just generates a random degree on scale of 180, I think, or 360. Yeah, 360. So these functions are here, and the only reason why I added them is, for instance, if we click the button now 7 times, it just adds 7 shapes of the same color on top of each other, which is not visually pleasing to look at. So when we do path here, what I can do is let random frame equals CG rect or utilities. You guys have these too, by the way. Generate random CG rect in rect, so I can pass it my drawing board frame. I can say I want it to be always between 150 and 250. And then here, I can just pass that random rect or random frame. So just to make things a little bit more fun, and I'm going to do the same thing for my colors.
So right now, I hope we get
It creates putting new ones on top of it, so you don't see it. Generate random CG color.
Is there an easy way to do this? Like I have a line of code to say once you do it,
No, you would have to keep track of a Boolean in your code or something like that. Wow. This is maybe a little bit big. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. 70 and 110 or something. Also, this random color is not completely random. The function that I always use keeps it to like vibrant visible color. So like it doesn't generate black or anything, because who wants to look at that? Right? So there's a couple of interesting things happening. First of all, you see that it's going away. And I'm actually not really sure why. So let's see. I think we can do drawboard.layer, insert sublayer at index. That might fix it. At index 0, so always keep it at the bottom. Let's see. These insert functions are the same thing as on UIKit, by the way. No. Let's take a look at our storyboard. This is why. So my toolbar, the more to the bottom, is on top of each other. So if I drag my toolbar under my drawboard, but then I don't know if my toolbar will still be visible. It looks like it. Okay, let's try it. Because I give my layer a background color. So that might now lay on top of it. No. It doesn't matter. I don't want to care about this. All right, so you can start view controller. So you don't need to do this. You can just keep it on add. Oh, I know what to do. I think it's as easy as doing drawboard dot clips to bounce through. So you have masks to bounce, which is on layers, and views have clip to bounce. Yep. So now it's still adding them, but it's cutting them off. Same thing. Very important thing, and it's like something that messes with me still. You know, like I'm like, why is this thing over something else? And then you're like, oh, just a clips to bounce or mask to bounce, depending on layer or view, and it's fixed. So I just generate a random CG rect with a width and a height within a frame. So I give it my entire drawboard, and then I assign that to my pool. Cool. Any questions about this? Also, remember when I did view debugging, where you could see a 3D kind of overview for like how your views were stacked? Here, editor or debug, view debugging, capture view hierarchy. This thing. Remember this? I showed this once. Important to know or see is that layers, no such thing. So a layer is a layer, so this debugging these things is pretty hard sometimes. Like you can clearly see that my, well, it doesn't overlap, but you can see that this bar and the drawboard stop and or touch almost at the same position. Oh, this is harder than I thought. See, like my drawboard stops here, and I think this is my UI toolbar. There we go. So they don't overlap technically, see? You can see it if you put it like this. But for your layers, it's just one layer. So it all shows up as one layer. So debugging is a pain.
So if you had one oval on top itself.
You don't see it. The only reason, that's why I really use random colors a lot, is you could assign random colors and give them an opacity of 0.3, and then you will actually see that. So using random colors is a very common way for me to like debug things. Because if stuff gets overlaid on top of each other and they have like an opacity of 0.3, you'll see that they actually lay on top of each other. Cool?
What was the third thing you had to update for the random frame? So you did the first two, and then you did one. Oh, the line.
No, I just did, I generate a random frame, pass it to the drawboard frame, a min width and a max width, and then the only other thing I do is generate random colors for the stroke color and the fill color. All right, let's move on to triangles. Let's look at a triangle with a shape like this. knowing that I said that we have two functions available called move to point and add line to point, how do you go about drawing a simple rectangle like that?
You define 3 points and then
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not, I didn't put it here. I think
Oh, yeah.
it is.
I think it's just, yeah.
Okay. Yes, the only downside is there's no such thing as saying create a shape with these points. So we have, let's just assume we only have access to add move to point and add line to point. And you can actually see that as a move to point where the pen goes away from the paper, moves to a point, goes down again, and then add line to point, draws, add line to point, and keeps drawing. If you do a move to point again, it moves up, goes to a new point, and you get to add line to point. So it's very like similar to a sheet of paper and a pen or pencil. So what I'm trying to say is, it always has this shape. So I don't want it to completely be random. So I always want, how do you call it in English? Equal side, equal. Yes, I think that's what it is. Yeah. See, how am I supposed to know if you guys barely know? Any guesses? Yeah, that's fair. Any guesses?
So you want them all the same size?
Yeah. These are all going to be the same size.
when you move to point, you just need to define the direction and how far.
New point. So a new point. When you do move or add line to points, you generate or you provide a new point. And these called CG points, right? So you just have
need the coordinates.
yes, X and Y. All right. I think the easiest way is we go to the top with add or move to point. We generate a random point. There's a function for that. We go to that point, move to point. Then we do add line to point, and we do, for instance, x plus 20 of random point and y plus 40. And then we do add line to point x minus 20 and y plus 40 still from here, and that will add this line. And then we can just do close path, which will close it for us. Does that make sense? So let's do that. So we've seen already one of the things we can, or the initializers of UI Bezier pad, which was oval indirect. Now for this one, we're not going to use any initializer. So I'm going to do let pad equals UI Bezier pad and just initialize it. So and then I'm going to create my random point and pass it my drawboard frame. So it generates a random point within the bounds of my drawing board. Does it make sense? We just pick, it's like closing your eyes and putting your pencil down on a sheet of paper somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. Cool. So now we have a random point. What is the function that I said we should use first? You have two functions available. Which ones?
Move to a point.
So pad move to point, which very nicely takes a CG point, which now isn't that nice. Random point is of type CG point. So we can just pass in a random point. So we're putting our pen down on the top of our triangle right now. This doesn't draw anything. So this is just, I mean, generally we also didn't create a layer yet. We're just working with a path right now. And what was the other function? add line.
Add line.
So path, add line to point. I'm going to create a new point, CG point make. I'm going to do random point dot x plus, I don't know, 30. And random point dot y plus 30. So we're saying from the random point we created here on the top, add 30 to the left and 30 to the bottom, which brings us in our bottom right corner, right? Who misses geometry in school?
So long ago.
I know, right? It literally took me yesterday, I'm not kidding you, 10 minutes staring at this function to wrap my head around what was going on. But it was like 12 o'clock at night, I have to admit. But I was like, how are you so dumb at the moment? So now we're on the bottom right. We need to go to the bottom left. Who wants to guess?
Now we have that. So did it move the point down? So now it's the point down?
No, so random point is still the same.
All right, so we're starting from the same point.
Yes, which is nice. You don't want random point to change if you create a completely new CG point here. You just read out what the x is, you add 30, and you read out whatever y is, and you add 30.
So would it be the same thing, but minus 30?
Yeah. Correct. And the y stays plus 30, right? Because you want to stay on the same level, so to say, of the right point. Mm-hmm. You need brackets again?
No, I can draw the red.
Just click execute. It's like you have a lot of work. If you want to keep going, try, well, you can keep going. There's a lot of things left. Here. Yeah, sometimes. All right, so now we could say go to the top again, but the easiest thing we can do is just do path dot close path, which will go from the bottom left to wherever we started. So it will try to close to the best of its abilities the current path. Cool? So we use this to write to draw a triangle, but again, you can go crazy with this. You can add the amount of points you want to add, right? This is very flexible. You can also, and maybe that's an interesting thing to show, we just do add line to point, but there's also more complex functions like add curve to point, which takes 2 control points. If you're familiar with a graphic design program, if you draw from one thing to the other, you most of the time have access to control points to bend something. So you can create the craziest shapes you want with this.
Is that what you use for the curve?
No, no. Curve, I don't remember what I used. I think I found an extension on a CS shape layer that rounds stuff for you. I was like, if I can get the like raw edges going, then the other things will be a piece of cake. So I didn't worry about that part too much. All right. Now the usual dance. What do we do? Just like with the oval. Not a frame. Instantiate a. Exactly. Triangle equals CA shape layer. What's next? Equals. Exactly. And I'm just going to give it a random background color. So fill color equals utilities dot generate random CG color. The last thing. Yeah, exactly. Drawboard dot layer dot add sublayer triangle. That's it. Ooh, look at this. Pretty cool, right? If you don't like the way they look, you can play around with the X and Y values to make them more to your liking. All right, our board is getting a little bit crowded, so I might skip the arc because arcs are really not that, I mean, we're halfway through. But what I do want to do is gradients and talk about deletion because our board is getting pretty full right now. So let's talk about deletion first because it's also dead easy. So let's take a look at delete all layers here, which is an IB action. And it says delete all layers by setting sublayers to nil. So it's really easy to delete all of this. The only thing you need to do is drawboard.layer.sublayers, which is an optional, so we can set it to nil. So sublayers holds an array of all the CA layers. So you can loop over this too. Let's say you want to do something, whatever that is, you can loop over that equals nil. And that will get rid of everything that is on your drawing board. Also, it's going to get rid of your label and your square that we added in view.load or wherever. Yeah, you can start fresh. Now, you don't have to do this just for our own fun. What if I do this on the main view? View.layer.sublayers equals nil. It's pretty interesting. So let's add some ovals and some triangles. And I will click this. Where's my bottom bar? It's gone. Because we added that to the main view, right? So it's a sublayer of view.layer. So if we set that to nil, it's all gone. Navigation bar, gone. And some stuff keeps around. Also, if you click anywhere right now where their buttons were, you get a crash. Because all of those like connections are they're gone. So I mean that's why I added everything into a drawing board layer because I can safely clear all of that out without deleting my user interface. But just to prove that adding something in your storyboard like a bar at the bottom is part of your views layer. So if you set sublayers to nil, whoop, wiped, done. Make sense?
Drawboard is standard. It'll always be drawboard, but we didn't create drawboard. That's a part of the.
What did I start my class off with? Remember when I went to my storyboard and I dragged out a UI view and you were so impressed that it was just a UI view? Drawboard. Do you think Apple uses English that is not really English in their code? Of course not. All right, 3 more minutes before the break, and I definitely want to talk about gradients because they're so much fun. So let's take a look here. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly because it's just the same thing like we've been doing the whole time. Create a fold with gradient, sure. Let gradient equals, instead of CA layer and CA shape layer, see a gradient layer is a thing. Just initialize it again. Now we don't set a fill color or a background color on this because it's a gradient. It needs multiple colors. So gradient has a property called colors. And as you see, it takes an array of any object, which is not true. It takes it, well, it's true, but it should get an array of CG colors. So equals an array, and I pasted two nice colors. They're actually nice on top, so you can use those. Important to know though, CG color. Your gradient will not work, and I swear to you that I've lost hours because I had one CG color not there. And it won't crash, it won't like yell at you on compile time, it's the worst. So you just paste in these two colors. And make sure to both cast them to CG color. I want my gradient to be full width, so I'm going to do frame equals CG rect make 0, 0 drawboard dot frame. Oops. Why don't I have access to that? Frame dot width, drawboard dot frame dot height.
Do you need the dot frame dot? Do you just dot?
Don't think so. Is that a thing? No, there's no width property. Everything in iOS that is visual is going to use frames, I think. And then eventually drawboard. And I don't want to do add sublayer because add sublayer adds it on top of everything else that is in there. So you can add it under everything else by doing insert sub. So drawboard.layer.insert sublayer at index. So I'm going to add my gradient at index 0. So if you have 10 layers on the drawboard, there's going to be an index from 0 to 9. If you add it at index 0, it's going to move everything over index-wise and add it at the bottom of everything else. This should work. Let's try it. So I can add triangles. Ta-da! So this is pretty cool. We're getting there. I want to show two more things you can set on the gradient that are very relevant. Is everyone here? Does everyone have this?
What should happen on
You should see gradients. Also, this colors array takes indefinite amount, right? So if you add 7 colors, it's going to create a gradient of 7 colors. So this, I mean, I only did 2 now, but feel free to go crazy.
It goes from top to bottom always.
Going to talk about that. No, well, by default, yes, but you can customize that too. You fix it? All right, so it goes from top to bottom by default. You can override that though. You can say gradient.startPoint equals CG point make, and these x and y values are a number between 0 and 1. If you have a view, 0, 0 is here, 1, 1 is here. So if you want to start, if you want to have a diagonal gradient, you want to start at 0, 0, go to 1, 1. If you want to have a horizontal gradient, you want to go from 0, 0.5 to 1, 0.5. Does that make sense? So let's experiment with that. So start point, let's say I'm going to go from 0, 0, endpoint, CG point make, 1, 1. So now I should have a diagonal gradient. Oh, wrong button. Diagonal. Nicer to look at already. And if you would want to have a horizontal one, you would go from x0, y 0.5 to 1, 0.5. So a lot of flexibility here going on. Now we have horizontal grading. Make sense? One more important thing you can set is the locations, which takes an array that needs to have the same amount of objects like your colors array. So you can say, I want my first color to start at 0, and I want my second color to be in full effect at 0.5. What you'll see is that your gradient is going to be bluish by half of the, or reddish. So 0.5 is going to be the first position, where it's going to be fully the last color. Does that make sense? So you have full control over how it splits out the colors you give it in on your frame, so to say. Yes?
So each number corresponds to one color.
Yes. So you're saying I want this color to start at 0%, so at 0, and I want this color to be in fully that color at 50%. So this is always going to be a number, So this is always a number between 0 and 1. There's no 2. Well, there is, but that's all.
So the reddish is starting in the middle.
Well,
But depending on
in
what
full
color-
effect. So here it is somewhat reddish, a little bit more reddish, but in the middle it's going to be the full red. It's going to be exactly this color. And everything that follows, if there's no further color, is going to be that full red.
Well, I can see the one.
Does it make sense? That's all I had about gradients. Pretty easy, right? Gradients are not the hardest. They're fun. Let's take a break.
Triangle.
Yeah.
Not a good artist, but a good artist.
8:15.
So, I guess, how often are you coding at this point?
With me,
Yeah,
as in life,
yeah. Like at work.
twice a week for this. No, I'm actually working on an entirely new app at the moment at work, which is mildly exciting. We're in wireframe stage. Working with, so we created wireframes in Sketch, and my coworker actually coded them up. So we want to test them with users, and we didn't want to use like InVision or anything because like reveal wireframes feel better. And we build it in a way that we think, it's also using dummy data at the moment, but we build it in a way that we hope and think, we're still working on it right now, and I'm actually working on the server myself. But at the moment we plug in the data, that the transition should be pretty straightforward, as out of like the data standpoint and architecture standpoint. So working on that at the moment, actually spent a lot of hours doing that today. And I have now 2 weeks 100% allocation to that project, so in 2 weeks it will probably be in a way better place than it is today. But so my coworker is learning iOS and helping me with that. I'm also doing the server at the moment, which is returning a little data already for a few sources, so plugging two in this week together.
But what server?
So we're basically building an idea validator, so you'll be able to like add an idea or a brand name you want to use, and it's going to check against a lot of sources. It's going to check for patents. It's going to do an Urban Dictionary search to make sure you're not using a name that you want to use. It's going to go to the iTunes API to see if there are already apps with that. It's going to go to Google Images to see what visually is associated with it. Did I say patents? It goes to patents. There's more. It goes to product hunts. So these what upload to product hunt at some point. It's going to go to Angel List. I think those are the biggest ones.
That's an internal product, or is it?
It's going to be released to the App Store.
So, pretty cool, man.
But it's our CMO that really wanted that. And
Sure, I guess.
That's full of that.
You talk to Fardex too? Yeah. Actually, a pull request got merged into the Swift standard library this week for Ender support. I mean, it's very early stages and nothing real yet, but just technical foundation to make it possible to work with. I think it would be great. I don't care about Ender myself, but I think it would be great for the Swift community in general. For what?
Development, just mobile development.
Yeah.
To have one code base that works well.
Yeah. I mean, it's still gonna be different. Like your APIs are gonna need to deliver the new architecture, but at least the language is not a problem anymore.
Yeah, when I tried that, use FU NPM package,
Yeah.
it just like kills any processes running. So you just type fuck you and whatever the process is, and it kills it.
Yeah.
So I tried it on Postgres today and it like destroyed Postgres.
That sounds good. Good.
Yeah, but database is like it's stupid, so I just downloaded it and tried it just for fun. After reset my computer.
Completely?
Well, I mean, I just had to restart it, you know, once I did that. And like it only takes the program argument, so you can type whatever you want in front of it. So like, fuck you, dumb asshole.
That's funny.
Postgres, boom. And you know, so at my job, our IT guy posted, because we had dogs in the office too, he posted Spot, or what is it, program? You guys gotta work to track the dogs. Paul.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then someone in our office on the general Slack channel was like, oh, we should get Paul out. That's is it like a real service or is it just like a proof of concept? Huh?
I mean, you could if it worked. But like, I don't think we have any intention in selling it except if they throw like a couple $100,000 on the table. I mean, it's open source, which also,
Oh, so we can get it too. We just have to get the little argument off.
yeah, but it's all open source. It's on our ISL repo, or yeah.
Are we going to learn how?
How many weeks do you think we still have? Okay,
No,
yeah.
no, no, I'm like recording for today. Like when we show the graph layout. To show, so it's like
Yeah,
up
maybe.
here from left.
Yeah, I can maybe. The thing is that like beautiful application I showed you, I don't think we're gonna get there today. We have like an hour and 15 minutes left. We need to talk about POP, so maybe we'll use POP to do something like that. I remember last time it was already a shit show, and I feel like I overdid it a little bit on Monday with maps. So Also, they were recording me, so I was like, if I go super crazy, I'm gonna get a lot of shit.
Yeah, like what? Got it.
The last was the end piece, and then it's, you know, putting that butter on one side, putting on the other, folding in half. There you go. Nice and new shoes.
Yeah, man, I'm trying to get some black on blacks.
Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah, because like I'm the only one that wears sneakers every day. Like, so my suits and everything, it's become like everybody's comfortable. So I'm like, and I'm like, dude, I need some different shoes. So about that time. So this, yeah, you go by Dre, so Dre, so like this is your first dev job, which is like from like full dev or no?
Well, like I worked at like some startups last year. So like one was like a real startup, and I was there for like 3 months. And then later, so I'm there from like around this time on through the summer. I worked at a great company that was trying to grow out their development position, or their development wing, whatever. And so I was working there. Then I have my own agency that I work with. So
You still like the spot where you're at now.
oh yeah, but we haven't like really done anything advanced yet, but slowly but surely.
Right? Right.
I'm gonna skip the arcs. The solution is on GitHub. All an arc is, when you draw it out, like there we go,
It's just something you give it a center point, right? And then you set a radius, for instance, 10. And then an arc is like something you can a piece from here to here, for instance, of a circle, so to say. Now, it's really interesting when you animate them, but when you don't animate them, they look like half a domain that is just doing on the screen. So,
solution is on GitHub if you want to. It's the same process. You're just using another initializer on UI Busy Pad, and that's it. Cool. All right, let's take a look at the other. I'm going to start with transforms because this one. So here we have Facebook Pop, which I'm going to do in a separate project, and then core animation, which I'm just going to show once and never going to talk about anymore. So I think this is the least important. Transforms are really important though. So let's go to our transform view controller. And all right, there's 3 functions: rotate, scale, and combination. So rotate is gonna rotate this beautiful UI view, just a view, not layer, view on our screen to a random angle. Scale is going to scale it from a point between, I think, 0 and 3. And combination is going to do both of these things at the same time, all right? So how do you go about that? Let's first create a random degree by doing utilities. Generate random degree. And I'm actually, well, I mean, this is using, so everything in iOS is using radians and not degrees. So it should be generate random radian. Radian, is that how you say it? Radians, right? This thing, m.pi. Remember that guy? Something like that. I don't remember the ins and outs. But it's very easy to write a function that generates, for instance, 300 degrees to radians. Also, This is still the old me. There's no need here to do self every time. This is my bad Objective-C habit. And that's here that I killed in the meantime. So how do we set the transform on our foo view? We can just do foo.transform, which is pretty interesting. It's a UI level thing, but it takes choreographic transform. So not really sure what the thought process was there, but you apply, well, you can also apply transforms on layer, but they work on normal views. So pretty convenient. I mean, the less you have to interact with core graphics, the better, in my opinion. So equals CG, affine, I can't type, CG, affine, transform, make, scale. There we go. And we, well, no, we need to rotate. I'm sorry, so sorry. CG, affine, transform, make, rotation. And this will take that angle that we just generated. So it's that easy, 2 lines to rotate an object or a UI view. So that's pretty cool, right? Very common thing to do too. You don't maybe think about that necessarily right now, but transforms are a very common thing that I do on an app. So every time you click, it rotates. Do you have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay,
I
cool.
wasn't sure how I got to get to that transform.
Oh yeah, there's tabs. This is a UI tab bar controller, so cool. Any question about this? It's pretty straightforward, I think. Now let's take a look at scale. And I want you to try it because it's very similar to what we just did. So try to make the view scale, and you click the scale button. By the way, there's a CG affine transform make rotation and a CG affine transform rotate. In most of your use cases, there's not going to be a difference between the two. When you do something like this, there is a difference when you combine the two. Scaling done. So food up transform, affine transform, make scale. So you pass it. If you want 2 different scales, you could generate 2 random numbers and pass in different x and y, but not sure how good that would look. What is important to see is that if we have a rotation going on and we click scale, the rotation disappears. So combining 2 transforms is the next thing. And if you rotate something and then apply a scale, that it's going to override whatever the rotation was.
But not the other way around. We scale it and rotate it.
Nope. Yes, it does. All right, combination. It's very similar. The thing is, though, we cannot assign to transform twice because one overrides the other. Like, we can see right now, right? So we couldn't do let random scale, let random degree, and then foo.transform equals this, and then foo.transform equals rotation, because that will override whatever the previous one was. So we need a way to combine the two. And the easiest way I found is to first create I don't know if we can do it, let's try, a general transform in, this is mildly weird. I'm actually going to look into this. CG affine transform identity. What is this? It's a variable. Okay. So you create a transform, and there's nothing applied to it yet. So it's just an empty transform, you could say. And the next thing we do is we're going to add the rotation, and you do that by doing transform. Oops, whoa. Transform equals CG affine transform rotate. So not make rotation, rotate, which first takes a transform, which is ideal because we're going to pass our empty transform, and just by doing transform, and we can again do utilities.generate random degree. And you can sort of chain on top of that. I think it needs to be for. I think that's why it's complaining. Yeah, because you're assigning again. So now we took this empty transform, pass it into CG affine transform rotate, and assign it back to it, which is really weird, but it's not that weird, honestly. And we do this again by doing transform equals CG affine transform scale, so not make scale, which takes a transform again, generate utilities.generate. And actually, I'm going to create one random scale here up top. Otherwise, utilities.generate random scale. I'm going to use these here. Otherwise, your X and Y scale is going to look different, and it looks, I remember, really bad. Overdose, so do whatever you think is best. So I first create a random scale, which is going to be, for instance, 0.7, and then both X and Y are going to be scaled 0.7. So you're always going to be keeping your like square layout. While if you would create two of them, you would skew things and it would look odd. And then the last thing we need to do is just foo.transform equals transform. And that should do it. Cool.
When you get run, you always run.
Absolutely.
I got an extra argument. So, never mind. It's you guys.
Any questions about this? I will assume that is a no. Oh, I want to show you one more thing, I think. see. UI view transform origin. Let's see if this works. Trying to see if we can, so now it's from the center, right? Trying to see if we can set a point to, see? Okay, yep. See what I did? So I moved to, so by default on iOS, transitions happen from the center of a view. I changed the point of where it has to happen on the top left. So this is the top left. And you can do that by setting a layers anchor point on. So see, these are very much like core graphics UI view mixed together, but I guess that's fine.
So you can't have it, you have to have a separate thing for one that you can do, if we rotate it and have it save whatever it was rotated as and then scale that. Like what we're trying to do.
No, you could. The only thing you would do instead of, here you, so to say, create a blank transform thing, you would do foo.transform and then add the rotation or the scale to it. So you take the current transform and you add on top of it. So if you want to change these two, that would work. So you would do for transform equals foo.transform, and then you would here, for instance, for scale, you would do transform equals CG applying transform scale passing the transform random scale and set that. And it's the opposite for, yeah, so you would have to put it on each of them. Right? All right, that's all I wanted to talk about like basic core graphics. I'm gonna skip CA basic animation because I don't use it. So I'm gonna focus my efforts on UI view animations and Facebook Pop. Cool? All right, new project from scratch. Also get your terminal juices flowing because we're gonna be working with pots again in a little bit, so. I was gonna do animate, because I was about to do surf, so I'm gonna keep it in line of what my plans were. Animate, and I'm gonna save it in solutions. All right, let's actually cater to Hijing's and May's requests. We're gonna make a bar graph and animate it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So I'm gonna do something like a invisible starting line and generate 3 bar charts that grow on load or on a button click or something like that to a random point. All right? I'm gonna do this first with UI view and make iteration, so no dependency. Then I'm going to show you how you would do that with Facebook. Cool.
Is it hard to do that thing you did with three bars? Like the one right next to it?
Yeah, well, drawing this, like the rough shape is not the hard part, then it's like making it smooth and then do like gesture recognition measures and stuff because there's like no tap gesture or you swipe gesture because you're not really like it. I do want to show one more thing because that was in the surf example, and I think that is important. We have been talking about the fact that our views or layers don't have any concept of auto layout, and I can actually easily prove that to you if I open up my animate introduction and I say gradient. This looks perfect, right? Because you're setting it to the views frame, but not so perfect anymore, right? It's a frame, it gets a fixed X and Y width and height, which does not update. So how would you do that? That's maybe a good thing to start off with. And I'm actually gonna do it in a new project just for the fun of it. Let's go to our storyboards. So what do I wanna do? I wanna achieve something where if you have your app layout, and you have, I'm going to create a gradient underneath the status bar, and I want that gradient to always be 20 points high or something. Always stick to the top left. Remember the first exercises with basic all layout, 0, 0, 0, and a height of 20 or something fixed. Yeah? So I want to do that, but with a gradient. The trick is to, I always create a UI view where I set my constraints on, and then I will use that to lay out my gradient every single time. So to show, this is a complete new project, fresh. So I'm going to drag out a UI view, dump it here, give it some color so we can see it. The gradient is overriding it anyway. So set it to be 0, and I think this actually will go to -20 because, well, let's try by starting 0. We can update it 0, 0, and a fixed height 20. Right? No crazy stuff, right? We are all aware how constraints works. Yeah, see, I need to update it because right now it sits right under the status bar. Status bar is 20 points high. Well, there's a better way, I think. Nah, maybe not. Let's set this top spacing to constant to -20. Right? So let's see what that looks like if we run. It's actually not perfect. Right. I'm not going to worry about the fact that it always needs to sit under the status bar. I don't care. I just want to show you what auto layout should look like. So I'm going to revert this. So it basically sits to 0. So I want this. This is fine. This will do the trick for me today. I want my gradient to always look like the blue square looks right now. So 0, 0, 0, and a width, a height of 20. Okay. So what I would do is create an outlet first to my view controller, and I would call it something like gradient wrapper, clearly indicating that my gradient will live in there. So I added a view, I added constraints, and I created an outlet to my view controller. Any questions so far? No? Please? No? Good to move on. Should I wait? All right. So I'm going to call a function here because I don't want to fill up my view.load, create gradient. And this is where I will create my actual gradient. How do we create a gradient? CA gradient layer. Top gradient, top colors. I'm gonna make it very ugly. Red color dot CG color. Yellow color dot CG. Well, I don't think it will let me do this here because it doesn't know. Never mind. UI color. And top gradient dot start point equals CG point make 0, 0.5. So I want it to be fully horizontal, and top gradient dot endpoint equals CG point make 1 and 0.5. No confusion? Next part in the process is, instead of adding this to my view, what I'm going to do is going to do gradient wrapper dot layer dot add sublayer of gradient. So I create my gradient and I add it in that view that will live on top, the blue one. First thing you should note is that I did not add a frame yet to my view, to my gradient, right? Gradients need a frame. I'm going to show you why. Let's take a look at what we used to do to get the like full width thing going is this, right? View.frame.width, correct? That's how we get, if we want the gradient to span the entire width, that's how we would do it. That's how we did it before. Now there's something interesting. Let's take a look what that prints out right now. Okay, that seems correct. I've had it where this would print 600 storyboard size. Storyboard 600 by 600. Basically, we're not going to set a frame right here because the moment you rotate, you want the frame to be different anyway. Right? Right now, it might be 400 width. The moment you rotate your phone, it's going to be a width of like 600 or 800 or something. So setting a frame here has no purpose. You can set one. Let's set one for shits and giggles. Top gradient dot frame equals CG rect to make 0 0 frame dot view dot top wrapper gradient wrapper dot frame dot width and height of 20, right? Does this make sense? So we're setting the frame to be 0 0 because we're adding it to that layer, and then the width to be the frame or the wrapper's width and the height of 20. So let's take a look at what that looks like. First thing you should note is that, and that's actually probably what I meant, if we print gradient wrapper's frame 600, it shouldn't be 600, it should be 414. You see that this is not fully yellow. And how can you see it? If you rotate, you'll see that this is fully yellow. If you rotate back and forth, you'll see that the left-hand side is not fully yellow. So what is happening is the gradient goes to somewhere over here. It just gets cut off. So this is what I'm talking about. This is unreliable to some extent. So this is not going to be the way we lay out a gradient. You guys seem very intrigued by all of this. Is this new? I mean, makes sense, right? So how do we do it? So setting a frame, sure, you can, but we're going to override it anyway in a better position. First thing I need to do is make my gradient accessible for everyone. CA gradient layer, just initialize it, and then you can get rid of this line. Because I want to have access to it in other functions. Cool? And here comes the trick. We need to tap in viewDit layout subviews. And you need to call view super.viewDit layout subviews. If you remember, I briefly touched on this during view controller lifecycle. Let's just put a print statement here. And see when and how many times this gets called. Pretty interesting, right? This gets called every time we rotate and unload. A couple of things that are important. Right now, it only gets called once on the launch. You're not guaranteed that. It might be called 6-7 times. It's not a problem for us. What I'm trying to say is, be careful with what you do in there. This gets called way more than you might anticipate. So don't do anything crazy there is all I'm saying. Changing a frame though is fine. I'm just saying don't abuse this function for anything crazy. You could not worry about all layout and update all your frames for everything there. That's what I'm trying to say, don't do that. Layers though are really useful because, well, there's no way to do auto layout with them. So what we can do is top gradient dot frame equals gradient wrapper dot bounds. Now I'm going to explain what bounds are in a second, but let me first confirm that this works. It does not. That is mildly disappointing, people. What is happening? Oh, I didn't add it anymore. So gradient wrapper, did you guys delete that? Did I just fuck up? I did. Ta-da. So what is bounds? Did we talk about bounds? Briefly, right? It's very similar to frame. The thing is though, it's the frame from within the view. So X and Y are always going to be 0 in this case. So, well, let me actually draw this out. I don't want you to, you can, if you don't want to break your head around this, it's the same thing as doing this. CG, rect, make 0, 0, gradient, wrapper, dot frame, dot width, gradient, wrapper, dot frame, dot height. So the bounds is the rect from within the view. So where the fuck is my marker? So let's say we have a big view, and then there's a little view sitting over here. The bounds of this little view is going to be relative to this one, so to say. But if you take the bounds, well, Jesus, I always fucking mess this up too. Just use frame. I don't remember the. I'd rather not tell you than tell you the wrong thing.
Is it similar to the eclipse to mound and
No.
I mean, like in the abstract concept, like you're doing it to.
Yeah, I mean that seems what it is. So the frame property contains the frame rectangle, which specifies the size and location of the view in its superview's coordinate system. That's why we explicitly set it to 0, 0, because I wanted to start at 0, 0 if you use CG rect make and you use a frame. Bounds property contains the bound rectangles, which specifies the size of the view and its contents origin in its own local coordinate system. Okay, so I mean, I think the bounds, if you don't change the center point of its superview, is always going to be 0, 0. All right. I mean, if you, I don't really care what you use. But so this is the trick. You put a UI view there, you put your constraints on the UI view, and then you use in viewDid layout subviews the frame of that view that gets updated correctly using auto layout to lay out your layer. Does that make sense?
So when you're rotating it, are you still supposed to see some?
Do you see blue? No, but yeah, the flashes of blue. There's not much you can do about that. So this gets called when the view did lay out its subviews, not when it is layouting its subviews. Which is, I mean, we obviously gave it a very obvious background color, right? And it's a split second, so I think it's fine. I have not found a better way myself or easier way of doing it.
Just change it to white.
Yeah, exactly. If you would make that background color not blue, you would be fine. All right?
Is that how you did that when you were showing us that example from your last class?
Yeah, that top little gradient, yeah, exactly, the same trick. All right, let's get started. I want to create a graph, and I'm going to use Snapkit because I will lay out my everything in code because I want to be able to change the amount of bars it draws by changing one variable, right? So let's open up our terminal. Here it comes. And go to wherever I don't even know where I am. Oh, solutions, lesson 21. This is not the same for you, by the way. So don't animate. So remember, you can just drag in the folder from your Finder. And if you do an ls, you should see your two things, right? Your Xcode project file. Oh, am I still recording this? I might have fucked up. Oh, no. Okay, good. Everyone there in terminal?
What are you drawing? Oh, drawing.
Just go, we didn't do anything. Make sure you're in the right directory. You there? How do we create a pod file? Pod init. So open up your pod file with your favorite text editor. You can use Vim with me if you want to by typing vi pod file. So vi, let's make this a Vim class. Vi pod file. Everyone there? Who's using Vim? Raise your hand. Disappointed. Okay, uncomment line 2 where it says platform, and uncomment line 4. If you're using Vim, use J and K to move around and X to delete characters. So up and down, 2 times X on each line. All right? We're going to be using 2 pods. Snapkit for our constraints. Let me make sure that the capitalization and stuff is not off.
What are we typing?
Just uncomment these lines, 2 and 4. So next thing in between target ends, type pod snapkit in pod pop. For pop, we're going to specify the last version because I think by default still installs 1.0. Oh, and you need a comma there. Is this Ruby? I hate Ruby. No, it's not. This is what your pod file should look like. Who's using Vim and needs help? Nobody? Okay.
You don't know. So for these ones, you have to put version 1.
The thing is, you don't have to, but the reason why I'm doing it now is because I tried to run my projects from last time and I didn't, the serve project, and I didn't specify a version, so it was installing newer. It's recommended to always specify a version.
You have the arrow inside the.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. And that's what it should be. Fucking hate Ruby. This is shit. So your pod file should look like this.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever we install anything, we always uncomment the second one.
Yes, since iOS 9, you need to.
How come we don't put in like the source part that they have?
Because that allows you to like download from GitHub directly. But I mean, sometimes that is necessary when, for instance, the Swift, you're interested in the Swift 3.0 branch because that breaks, for instance. But these 2 pods, the like Cocoa Pods directory has the right ones for us. All right, everyone has this? No? Yes? Okay. WQ, or make sure you're in your folder again in terminal and run pop install. To do the what?
The problem was you were in instant mode, and you so what you did, so you get an instant mode by typing. You can see nothing's here right now. So if I type I, go in instant mode, and if you're in instant mode, your WQ will actually type. So what you need to do is if you're in instant mode, you do escape. You'll see that instant mode is waiting on you. All right, you should see something like this saying your stuff installed, you're a good boy, close your Xcode project and open up the XC workspace. If you're in terminal, you can just run open animate.xc workspace. Or just, and please, all of you open the workspace and not the project, and then it could be like, oh, it doesn't run. Open up the workspace. Or just type open period, and it will open up a Finder window for you, and you can just double click this one.
What was the version?
1.0.9. What's up?
What is the Snapkit version? Does anyone know?
0.15.
0.15.0?
Yeah.
Make sure your Snapkit is capital S, S and K. And make sure you close your Xcode project file because you can't have both open at the same time. Anyone else having issues? Basically, if you open up your Xcode, you should see your animate project or whatever you called it, and a second project called Pops. If you do not see that, you failed, and you need to raise your hand right now so we can fix it. All right. All good? Ready to move on? All right. So, we're going to create a graph, which is only mildly exciting, but it is a little bit exciting. So let's create it. And let's create it in a way that makes sense programmatically. So, I mean, sure, we can drag 4 views into storyboards and animate those, but then your graph is definitely not dynamic, right? You need to do this in a as good as possible way, I would say. Let's do one thing, though. And this is where I'm going to show you, again, how well storyboards and view controllers or your code are supposed to work together. So I'm going to drag out a new UI view, my storyboard. I'm going to get, and you guys should do the same thing. I'm not just showing off here. I'm going to give this a top constraint of like, I don't know, 50. Left and right of 0. And a fixed height of 250. What I'm going to do is, depending on how many graph bars I want to draw, I'm going to change their height dynamically so it always fits in this wrapper.
this will function as the wrapper for our graph. Okay?
So at the top, strike is 50.
Yeah, I fucked up again. 15. Also, you can select this little drop down, and it will update the frames for you automatically. So by default, this says none. If you select this, items of new constraints, ta-da! So I will always draw my bars. If I have 3, they will be pretty thick. If I have 5, they will be thinner, but they will always live in this beautiful pink thing. Another best practice that I give as a tip, this is not going to be pink. This will be transparent or white, so to say. Don't do that on your storyboard. I prefer to give it a very ugly color on my storyboard and then in View.Load set it to transparent. But at least if somebody sees your storyboard, they know that there's a view sitting there. And it's not just hidden. And they're like, where is all of this coming from? So I'm going to actually do that at the end. But I'm going to keep it for debugging purposes like this. All right? View controller. I'm going to create a function that will create our graph. I call a function in View.Load, create graph. Oh, there's code folding. Where is that shit? Code folding. So I'm going to just fold down these. You need to enable that though. Let me show you where. If you go to your settings, command, comma, text editing, code folding ribbon is off by default. Check it as checked. It allows you to fold code together. So, for instance, this is not gone. It just folds it down so it's not cluttering my view anymore. Don't worry about it if you are not getting what's happening. All right.
How do you create that?
How do you what?
How do you?
Command, comma, text editing.
No, I mean like, how do you fold the block?
There's little arrows here on the left next to your line numbers. I only showed you half of the shortcuts.
Like that shift command O. I was like, dude, I think it's like.
Yeah, it's the best. All right, let's 30 minutes. This is going to be very interesting. So we want to create a graph, right, with a variable amount of numbers or like bars. So for I in I'm actually running this for myself to check if we're creating 3 or 4 right now because I'm very bad at these like period, 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 or period, period, smaller than signs. So no shame in that. I want to create 3 bars at this moment. So it creates 4, so I need it like this. So now it's going to create 3 bars. If I ever want to change this number, I change this to 7, and it will create 7 bars eventually. Now it's just printing, which is useless, but it's a good start, right? So how do we create what is called a bar? Now, there's a lot of complexity we can add and unadd. You can add padding or spacing in between the bars and stuff like that. I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm going to start with having them all touch each other, and then if we have extra time, which we won't have, we can improve on this, okay? I mean, it's true. So what is a bar? A bar is just a UI view, right? Do we all agree with that? Yes? So for each bar, we're going to create a new view, call it UI view. And this is going to be very interesting because you guys don't have this, but I want to create a random color for them. Generate, I'll paste it in Slack. Paste this in your project. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to see. And I think for now, I'm just going to assume that my view widths, my bar widths, are going to be percentages. And actually, let's improve immediately. I didn't prepare this, so this is also going to be a process of me thinking. Let's percentages. I guess that will work. Or let's just set them as fixed widths right now, as in points. Does that work? Can we do that? For instance, like let data equals 30, 100, 180. $130, $220. All right. So I will have 5 bars right now. So I'm going to immediately change this to data.count. If I add another data point, my graph will generate one more bar. And you can actually refactor this to var point in data. It's nice to look at, in my opinion. Does it make sense what I just did? If I ever add an extra point, it's going to generate a new bar for me. Really important, this is going to be in points, so not percentages. So this is not perfect, but I don't want to deal with math and calculations here. If you get it with points, I hope you can convert it to percentages yourself. All right? So we need to set our views. So view.background color equals generate random color. And then eventually, last thing we need to do is say, oh, did I create an outlet already to that pink view? I don't think I did. Main.storyboard. I'm going to create an outlet here to what is called a graph wrapper. Okay, that's good. Graph wrapper. So I just dragged an outlet from that pink view called a graph wrapper into my view control. Last real step I need to do is do graph wrapper dot add subview view. Make sense? So right now we won't see anything. We just added, in this case, 5 views to our wrapper, but they don't have a frame, or they don't have any constraints set on them, so they won't be visible. Yes? I'm going to keep going, and you have to yell at me to stop because time limit. But I will stop, but I can't wait and for nothing. So we need to set constraints, and let's use Snapkit. And before we can use Snapkit, we need to import Snapkit. So import Snapkit. If that gives you an error, do a Command B so it builds your path files for you. And then we're able to do view.smp make constraints. Oh, and that was maybe fast. SMP underscore make constraints, hit return once. It's going to highlight this closure function, hit return twice, and then you write your constraints in there. So let's think about this. All of our bars are going to have the same left and height, right? We're going to calculate the height, and the left is always going to be 0. So make left equal to 0. Make height equal to graph wrapper of SMP height. Does it make sense? And the width is also pretty straightforward. Make width equal to, what is width? Who wants to guess? We refactored it so we just have access to points, right? So we first sentence run is going to be 30, 100, 180, 130, 220. This might all terribly go wrong, by the way. I don't know if we can pull this off in this amount of time, but we'll see. Who's here?
Generate random color on top. Before we had like utilities that generate.
Yes, that's how we should be doing it. And then there's time, so I didn't create a utilities class. But technically this would go in a utilities. This does not belong in a view controller. All right? So what constraint are we missing? We're missing one important constraint. It knows about its width, its height, and its left. But what does it not know about? Its Y position, right? It does not know vertically where it belongs. So how do we go about that? Well, so an interesting question. What I like to do is I like to keep track of something here called previous bar, and I'll create an optional UI view. And at the end of each iteration over my loop, I'm going to say previous bar equals view. So the first time this runs, this will be nil. It's going to create this first bar. It's going to assign it to previous bar. So see what I'm doing? So we can do, I think we can do an if here. If let previous bar equals previous bar, that means you're not the first one. There's been a bar created before you. We can do make top equal to previous bar dot SMP bottom. Make sense? So if there is a previous bar, we set our top equal to that previous bar's bottom. Else, make top equal to 0. That's it. This should create a graph of all as well. What? Oh, of course.
Yeah.
What is wrong? This is always the fun thing, converting. Well, let's do it like this. Oh, wait. Multiplied by 1 divided by data count. Oh. Let's do it like this. Let height equals CG float 1 divided by CG float data counts. The reason why is it's 2 integers, so it's going to evaluate to 0. And if we both wrap them in CG floats, that's not going to happen if all goes well. Yes. So what just happened? So our data count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We did this, right? 1 divided by 5. Dividing 2 integers is gonna round it, and it's gonna say this is 0 or 1 or something. It's something weird. So I explicitly say that both should be floats. So it's creating a float of 1 and creating a float of 5. And what we're doing here is we're setting the bar height equal to the wrapper's height. And then, for instance, 1 over 5 is 20%, right? So, and we multiply that by 0.2. So, for instance, if the height is 200 and we have 5 bars, we expect each bar to be 40, right? Am I correct? If our height is 200 of the wrapper and we have 5 bars, each bar should be 40 points high, right? So what we're saying is make the height equals to the wrapper's height. So we do, and then we multiply that by 1 divided by 5. That's what we're doing here. We're saying make your height equal to the wrapper's height and multiply that whatever, well, this shouldn't be height, this should be like, I will rename this, but by 1 over the amount of data. So if there's 6 bars, this is going to update, and the bars are only going to be 32 points high. 8 bars or 9 bars, and so this, and if there's 1 bar, it's the full height. If there's 2 bars, it's half the height.
You can't just use the multiplier. If you do, it's gonna be small.
You don't need to import foundation. If you import UIKit, you by default import foundation, if I am correctly.
Oh, yeah, because
I'm going to call this height multiplier. Oops. But we have a graph. It's mildly exciting. Only mildly, but it's pretty exciting, right? This wasn't too hard, was it? Andre, was this hard?
No, quick.
Quick, but not hard. I like it. I like it that way. Let me do some renaming. You don't need to do this. This is more for like if you guys ever watch this later, you're going to be like, what does this moron do? For instance, 1/5 or 1/6. Any questions so far? No? Still concerned about this UIB transform origin. Oh, hop view transform.
what? Rename?
What? Bar.
You just changed view to bar.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's just see how it goes. Any questions so far?
Previous, I'm in a weird situation where my previous bar giving me an error. Never changed it. Well, so it said never liked it, so he never liked it. That's why.
For regular two boxes.
Thanks.
How's it going?
Go back to the, when I did all the difference, the 98 bars. Because right now, I'm not.
I mean, you don't have any constraints on it.
But shouldn't it still generate some color?
Maybe. What is that? Oh, this one is about 2. Oh, wait, this makes sense. Why
This is really. Oh, you have new top space.
Oh, right, you choose that.
And then, well, okay.
We didn't talk, 'cause they choose to read too far.
You don't have an outlet to it, so how can you add things to it? Oh, you rename this? Yeah, that's on.
Using everything.
It would also help if you, why do you do this? And your code would always, your code like all the way over the place. All of this. You're putting functions inside of create gradient. What's all this? Okay, I'm just gonna copy it here.
Don't worry about it. I'll look at this.
Okay.
All right,
So,
10 minutes, 9 minutes, by the way. Yes, keep
when
going.
you define a high multiplier, instead of using CG float, is it?
Yes, I think it will work too. I know when you're working with floats and layouts, a lot of times it's expecting CG floats, but it might automatically bridge it for you. Oh.
Why did you create a function for you did layout?
For that gradient layer on top, every time we rotate a device to assign it to update its width and height to that blue rectangle, I can't talk about this anymore. We need to move on. Because a gradient layer doesn't lay itself out. It doesn't have constraints.
Oh,
Remember, so in viewed layout subviews, every time we updated the width and the height of that gradient layer to the blue box frame. All right. Let's add some animation. I'm going to start with, I'm going to jump straight into Facebook Pop. We need to use Facebook Pop, right? So let's take a look at what Facebook Pop says to do. So we did the install, adding framework manual, we don't do that. What is this shit? This is Objective-C. Welcome to Objective-C. We don't have Objective-C. We are working with Swift. So how do we use this in Swift? You need to do a little trick. You do new file, and you choose this, Objective-C file, not a header file, the M file. It says M. We're gonna delete this file immediately again, so call it whatever you want. Call it foo. Never leave it in your project, by the way. Hit next, hit save, and this is it. Don't click anything here yet. You want this, create bridging header file. This is gonna be the file that bridges your Objective-C to your Swift. If you don't create, good luck. It only prompts you to do this once. Then you need to go into settings, do all crazy kinds of shit. So you say yes, create bridging header file. As you'll see, it will create a animate bridging header.h file. Whatever your project name is, dash bridging header. Select your foo file, hit delete, and select move to trash. All right. Let's take a look at our bridging header file. Write this. So this allows you to expose public headers from Objective-C to Swift. It says on top. That's it. That's the only thing you need to do in here. Do Command B, so it builds. So it succeeded. If you see that, that's good. And up top here, now you can do import pop. If you do Command B again, it should say build succeeded, and not build failed or something like that. So that's how you port an Objective-C CocoaPod to your Swift stuff. I actually had a lot of slides for all of this, I just remembered. Transforms. All right, so let's quickly go over this. Making it work in Swift is not super hard. Downsides, all documentation is written in Objective-C. So you'll have to translate a little bit. But you can query GitHub to see how other people use it. I'm going to do that. Pop is super stable. We're 2 years into the existence of Facebook Pop, and there's only been 10 releases, from 1.0 to 1.0.9, so not even a major release. It basically did not change in the past 2 years, which is pretty awesome because it just works. If anyone ever used Facebook Paper, which is just fucking awesome, like how well they created that app, this framework, Facebook Pop, is what powers all of Facebook's Paper application. They open sourced it, so pretty cool of them. If you ever hear people saying that Facebook is all the evil in the world, I can agree with that partially, but the amount of stuff they gave to the developer community is insane. So you can say that they have to shut up.
Except for parse.
They took that away. That's a gaping hole in my heart. Okay, 2 kinds of Facebook Pop animations that we care about. There's a basic animation and a spring animation. Spring animation is the fun one, with all the bounciness and the squiggly wiggly. Now, for something like a opacity change, you will never use that because it doesn't make any sense. You don't see an opacity bounce. You see a movement bounce, or a transform you see bounce. But I still use basic animations for, you mean for alpha transitions. So you pass in the property you want to animate by calling pop basic animation property name kpop view alpha, kpop view scale xy, or something like that. You always have to give it a 2 value, which might be very weird. Talk about that in a little bit. Then you give it a spring speed and a spring bounciness. Numbers between 0 and 20, default 12, default 4, spring speed. The faster you put this is the initial takeoff speed. So if you give it a fast takeoff speed, it's going to start off fast and your animation is going to be done quickly. You can't set a duration. We're not easily using Facebook Pop. Just set spring speed. That is your duration, so to say. Spring bounciness, the higher the bounciness, the bouncier it will be, of course. All right, let's start with a basic. The reason why I'm going to start with an alpha transition is because I don't know if the scale transition will work. Because the scale transition to be pretty needs to start from here, not from here, right? Otherwise it's going to look like an awkward graph. So I'm going to start with this an alpha, and if maybe we figure it out, and if not, I'll post it on GitHub. So, okay, this is going to be interesting. All right, I want you to do 2 things. First, I want you to say on top var bars equals UI view empty array. So we will put all of our bars that we create in that array, so we can query over it. I cannot animate them in view.load because the view didn't present itself yet. It might work, but it's bad practice. So I'm going to call a function in view.appear to trigger animation. Make sense? All right, so bars, empty array. And so in your for loop, what I want you to do, right before you do previous bar equals bar, I want you to do bars, self.bars, because we're in a closure, .append, bar, or view, whatever you call it. This makes sense? Just keeping track of a central array with all our bars. Implement view.appear, super.view.appear, animate. Call a function, animate in graph. That's it. Facebook Pop will do it for you. That's not true. It's not. We need to implement that function. Any questions about this so far? Take silence as a no. Func, animating graph. Just create the function that we call in view.appear. Now let's make this fun. Let delay type float, I'm going to explicitly say it's a float, equals 0. I want the bars to animate one after each other, not all at the same time, because what's the fun in that, right? All right. So for bar in bars, we'll have to create a Facebook animation. And actually, I'm going to do something else. For index, is that how you do it? In enumerate bars. Ooh, it does not like that. How do we do that again? Swift array. Index. Oh, okay. Sure. Dot enumerate. So we're going to create a basic animation, alpha animation, or just animation. Let's keep it simple. Pop basic animation, and there's only one initializer. Property names. A pop view. It might not give potenting, but believe me, it exists. A pop view alpha. I only covered 30% of Facebook pop. Animation dot toValue equals 1. I think this should work. Bar dot pop add animation for key bar alpha, and I'm going to explain what this is in a little bit. So this will evaluate to string saying bar alpha 1, bar alpha or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Okay. Next thing, delay plus equals 0.10. I'm going to increment for each bar the delay by 1/10 of a second. And it needs to be var delay, of course. So, next thing I'm going to do is delay. Facebook pop. Always the same questions I face. It's insane. No. Oh. Begin time. That's the one I'm looking for. Begin time equals CA current media time plus delay. This should work. Cannot convert of type float to whatever you want. Double. You can be a double for all I care. Right. This should, at the most basic work. We forgot one thing though. All of our bars have an opacity of 1 already. So when we create our bars, set the alpha to 0. That makes sense, right? If something is already 1, you cannot animate it anymore to 1. Well, you could, but you don't see it. I fucking hope this works. Wow. Does this make sense? We create an animation, we set its toValue to 1. There's no delay property, so what you need to do is set a begin time, which is a point in time. You take the CA current media time, who knows what it is, it doesn't matter. And you add up the delay that you accumulate up here in a variable. Every time this loops, you increment that delay, so the next bar delay starts a little bit later than the other one. Because this whole for loop finishes in a split second, right? So you need to increment that delay And what is this? You can give animations a keypad, so to say, which means if you would invert them and the animation keypad is the same, it would pick up where the animation is at this moment. This is pretty hard to explain. We don't need this at this moment, but it's very good to say, I always do something like bar, and it should be bar 1, so bar, this index should go there, dot alpha. And let's say I immediately after that start a loop to go back to 0, and let's say a bar is at 0.7 on its way to 1, and these keypads line up, it's going to pick up from 0.7 and go back to 0. So it's like the kind of syncing in between states that is possible. This is it. I have to go. I need to go somewhere tonight, but I'm going to try to make this work with percentages and transforms. So they are bouncy, because this is no fun. We could have done this without Facebook Pop. The reason why I wanted to show Facebook Pop is because I wanted to talk about that bridging header thing, which is something that is pretty hard to explain if you're not here. So keep an eye on Slack. I'll update this probably not tomorrow, but before the end of the weekend.
How would we have done this without Facebook Pop? What we just did?
Duration 0.3, delay, options, curve, ease, in, out, animations, bar.alpha, or what is it, bar.alpha equals 1, completion nil. This will do the exact same thing. And here delay needs to be something else again. Are you serious? Oh, also a double. I should have made it a double. So this should achieve the same effect. But there's another one you can use. Using this spring damping bullshit, which, I mean, look at how long these things are. It's like ridiculous. I think, let's set it to 20, but no, this doesn't make sense. This allows you to do bounciness too in iOS. But we're animating an opacity here, so bouncy, and they suck. That's just what it comes down to, the built-in bouncy springiness of. The reason why animations are better when they bounce is because they're natural. It feels natural. It feels unnatural when something eases out and comes to a stop, and that's just this. That's not how life works most of the time, right? Like, even if you brake with your car goes like that slight, like, take forward and then backward. So Facebook Pop set out to create something that feels a little bit more natural. And Apple tried to do the same thing and failed, which is fine because we have Facebook Pop. But so an animation is about 3 lines of code for a basic one, 5 lines of code for a spring animation. So this will fill up your code pretty quickly. I have view controllers, and that's because I suck at writing code, or I used to suck at writing code, where I had like 200 lines of Facebook Pop animations. They're not hard. They're most of the time you can copy paste, but you need to explicitly create all of them.
Is there any way when you create one part, is there any way to create it that's like grows from 0 to 1?
What?
When you create a bar, so for example, when you create one bar, is there any way to have it to grow from 0 to the full length?
That's what I'm going to try to make for you guys. I have to go. I can't. Also, it's 9:30. Go home. Go enjoy your night. Whew. Office hours this weekend. Who's interested?
Yeah.
All right. Let me think. What do I have to do this weekend? I think I need to drink on Saturday, though. I think I'm going to do them Saturday morning. I know you guys want to do them on Sunday morning, but your excuse used to be homework, and you don't have any homework right now, so we can do them on Saturday. So Saturday morning at 10:30, unless I note otherwise. Let me know by Friday if you plan on coming by 9 p.m. Nobody lets me know on Slack. I'm going to bed, and I'm not setting an alarm. I mean, I don't go to bed at 9:30, but you know what I mean.
Do you prefer to do 10 a.m. on Saturday or 1 p.m.?
Definitely not 1 p.m. I'm not a morning person. I hate getting